You are listening to the VBAC Link podcast, episode number 52. Today we are talking with our friend Destiny, who is one of our favorite Instagram followers, and she just recently had her HBAC, which stands for home birth after cesarean, and she had such a long labor. She had a chiropractor come and adjust her while she was in labor, and let me tell you what, I think she was listening to the podcast almost right from the very beginning. And we are so excited because we remember messaging her while she was preparing.
In labor, even.
Yeah,
we were asking, what's going
labor
on? We want to be there. What's happening? And then we didn't hear from her. And we were like, we hope everything's going okay. And then she messaged us. And we were like, yeah.
And we love it. And we have a special treat for you because she actually has a birth video. And her videographer said that I can share it. So take a look at our YouTube channel. After you're done listening to her story, go to our YouTube channel, just search for the VBAC Link, and it's going to be right there on our home birth playlist. But anyways, before I start telling her story, and before we get into her story, Megan has our review of the week.
And today's review is from Lana Cohen-Sullivan. Sorry if I totally botched that. She says, I've been listening to your podcast for the past couple of months, and it has been such a source of inspiration and hope during my pregnancy. I relate to all of these women, and it's so awesome hearing stories of similar first birth and successful VBACs. It was also great to hear the repeat C-section episode. I have been so afraid of it going that way again, scared of the feeling of failure. But I know I won't because I've done everything humanly possible to have a VBAC. I also loved Shermesia's episode,
Me too.
which we love her, and think that it's so important that you guys are talking about the struggle of women of color have when it comes to birthing. I just really love what you are all doing, and I look forward to someday being a woman of strength success story. Thank you.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you, Lana.
Woman of strength success story.
I love that.
Do you know what, though? That's like everybody. Everybody's a woman of strength success story.
Absolutely.
VBAC, HBAC, CBAC, QBAC, LMNOP back. It's all success, right? Because
women, you rock. You rock.
We're proud of you.
Yep.
You are tuned in to the VBAC Link podcast with Julie Francom and Megan Heaton, VBAC moms, doulas, and educators here to help you get inspired for birth after having a C-section. Together, they have created a robust VBAC preparation course along with this uplifting podcast for women who are preparing for their VBAC. Although these episodes are VBAC specific, they encourage all expectant moms to listen and educate themselves on how to avoid a cesarean from the get-go. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not meant to replace advice from any other qualified medical professional. Here are your hosts, Julie and Megan.
Here we go. We are going to get right into it. Our friend Destiny, and man, guys, she kind of been through it all as far as her VBAC. So this is going to be full of good nuggets, full of useful information for you guys to pick apart and take with you on your own journeys to having a safe and satisfying birth. Destiny, I am so excited to hear the story from your point of view, from your own voice, and I'll just go ahead and let you take it over.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I've been so excited to be able to share my story with you, mostly because I know how much of all of the stories that other mamas have been able to share through this platform that you guys have created. That's so amazing. Just really blessed me throughout my pregnancy, throughout my delivery. Yeah, you guys just gave me so much hope and so much education, and I've just felt so blessed. I've been really excited to be able to share my story to hopefully help educate and inspire some other mamas kind of in the same position. So we'll see. Let's see. So just a few months after my husband and I were married, we got pregnant with our first daughter, and it wasn't a planned pregnancy. However, we were super excited. We were I've always wanted to be a mom. So I was like, this is really exciting. This is perfect. Yes, whatever. It's all great. We were super excited to kind of go along this new journey. Overall, I had a super healthy pregnancy. Everything was pretty much going perfectly. I had pretty much no swelling. I was generally pretty active. I ate pretty well. Everything went so smoothly. No issues. Baby was active. Everything was great. And then come about week 34, I believe, we went in for an appointment, and we found out that our daughter was breech. And she was in the frank breech position. So I know you guys are probably
Oh my
familiar with that.
goodness. Yeah.
But basically, that's where her head is up, her butt is down, and her legs are just straight up. She's kind of like in a V.
Very uncomfortable
Yeah.
position. I can't imagine
Yeah.
sitting in that position.
But I just remember after finding that out, I just remember mentioning to my doctor, I've actually heard of stretches and things that you can do to help a breech baby kind of turn back head down. So basically, I'm just going to go home, do everything I can until our next appointment and just see what happens. And then directly from that point, she went on to kind of tell me how none of those are proven methods of helping the baby's turn, but if it made me feel better, I could just do it. And that would be okay.
They don't teach those things in obstetric school anymore. They just don't know how to do it.
Right. And so anyway, so I left feeling like I could definitely help her turn, because I think when it comes to baby things with myself, I can be a little bit stubborn, where I just feel like,
Good for you.
I can do this. It's my baby. I can do it. And so, yeah, so basically I went home. I did all the things. I was on my hands and knees for 3 weeks straight, just trying to help this baby turn. And finally we came back to our appointment a couple of weeks later, and she was still breech. And during those weeks, I had done a ton of research and just kind of looking into an external version, if it came down to that, if that was going to be something that we were interested in. So that's basically where the doctors go and manually try to turn the baby from the outside. And I was super nervous, but to me it was super worth it, because if she would turn head down, I would be able to have her naturally, which is really what I wanted.
Yay.
Yeah, and so I remember going into this OR room. I remember it just being so cold for some reason. Everything was white, and I remember just laying there on this bed in the center of the room, totally naked, just getting ready for the doctors to come in and do this. And they had said, this isn't something that we do super often here, so is it okay if some students join us? And I was okay with that. But I think total there may have been 14 or 15 students there.
Holy
Everyone was just watching.
smokes.
Yeah, but that's super cool, because now
That's a
these
lot,
students
yeah.
see that has been done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. You're
Yeah.
changing the next generation of obstetricians, and I'm proud of you for that.
Yes, I was fine with it. I was like, if it helps the baby turn, whatever, I'm good with it. Let's just do it.
Oh, that magic juju from those students.
Yeah. So anyways, during that was pretty much unsuccessful, totally. It wasn't really what I was expecting. I remember before I went in for the version, I had watched multiple videos on successful external versions, and they'd be women sitting in a little room with a super gentle doctor who would kind of feel the baby, and work really with a lot of technique. And to me, it felt like I was just sitting there, and there were these two doctors just on opposite sides, just pushing with their full force opposite of each other. They were kind of yelling. I was yelling. It was just a lot.
Aww.
It was kind of chaotic. But
Yeah.
anyways, basically, I knew pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be successful because of her position.
Yeah.
Her butt was down really far into my pelvis, so pretty much she wasn't able to move. She was a champ throughout it. Her heart rate stayed the same pretty much. But yeah, so after that, they wheeled us into a little room where they were just going to monitor us for a little while, watch baby, make sure she was okay. And a few minutes later, one of the doctors came in who was doing the version, and she just said, we went ahead and scheduled you for a C-section in about, I think it was 5 days after the version, because the version was a little bit later than they said they would normally want to do a version. So the cesarean was scheduled pretty soon after. And turns out they had scheduled her C-section on the day of my birthday, actually, so we shared.
Oh my gosh. Yay,
Yeah.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Well, that's okay. So fast forward, we had a super routine C-section. The doctors were just talking to each other. I was super nervous and shaky. I remember asking the nurse who was above me if they were going to start soon. And then she just kind of laughed and said, no, they already started. Your baby's almost out, actually. And I think the baby had come out just a couple of minutes later.
It's crazy
The
how
entire
fast
thing
it can
was-
be, huh?
Yeah, super fast.
It was so fast. And I think the whole entire C-section was 45 minutes, and it was just so fast and easy. Yeah, it was pretty much perfect, I think, for how a cesarean could go. But since my daughter had been breech most of my pregnancy, I remember just looking back, I couldn't take her right away because I think at one point my blood pressure kind of tanked, and so I just had to opt to wait to hold her because I felt super nauseous and I felt like I couldn't hold her yet. So they laid her back on the bed and clipped the cord. My husband was back there, and I remember just hearing her cry and like looking back toward the table and just seeing her 2 legs sticking straight up in the air because she had been breached for so long that her legs were pretty much stuck in that up position.
Yeah, have you seen
so
that
cute.
video going around Facebook with the little baby licking his toe? Like this
Yeah.
breached baby like licking his toe like he is sucking his thumb.
That actually
see that?
happened. I haven't seen it, but that today at a birth, that baby came out and was actually like reaching and like holding onto the foot and like trying to put the foot in.
Wow.
But like the baby wasn't breached, but like I was like, oh my gosh, like I
The things these
wonder if
babies
that's like
do.
that in utero. Yeah.
That's so funny. Both my
So
girls
cute.
always kind of eat their toes. It's their thing. But basically the cesarean was super routine. Everything was great. I had a pretty quick recovery. I remember that night I was up just walking around with her already. I was kind of waddling around, but everything was pretty smooth. I was super grateful to have such an easy experience because I know that's not that way for a lot of women. I was really grateful that it wasn't an emergency situation, that everything just went really smooth and as planned. But I knew even before having the C-section that I wanted to have a vaginal birth the next time around. I remember having friends and family ask about our next kids and just my plans for having repeat cesareans and how many kids we would want to have because of that. And I just remember saying, totally uneducated, but I just remember saying, no, you don't have to have all C-sections just because you had one. At that point, I'd never even heard of a VBAC. I didn't even know that term. But I knew that I wanted to have a natural vaginal birth next time. I spent the next few months researching and just becoming familiar with what VBAC meant and finding other moms like the ones on this podcast that I could relate with who had successful ones. Yeah, I remember when your guys' podcast launched, I was right there and I was so excited and I was like, this is going to be me. Like what these mamas are doing, I can do that.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
was super,
Were you the
super,
one
super
that
intense.
downloaded like my first ever like let's see if I can make a podcast episode? Was that you?
I'm not sure. I can't
Oh,
remember.
I remember somebody saying, it might have been you. I did a little test run and I'm like, hey, Megan, look how easy this is. And then I just uploaded it and then it got a couple downloads. And I'm like, look, Megan, this doesn't take any time at all. Little did we know.
Yeah.
Yes, I was so excited. I remember when the first episode came out, I listened to it like immediately that day. I stopped what I was doing and I had to listen. I was so excited. And from that point, seriously, it helped just encourage me and all of that jazz so much. But yeah, so basically I just spent a ton of time kind of educating myself on what a VBAC was, listening to stories of moms who had successful ones. I felt like I wanted to listen to a big variety of mom stories because
Yeah.
I didn't know how my birth was going to go. So I wanted to hear the ones that were super hard and I wanted to hear the ones that were quick and easy and smooth and everything in between. I just wanted to know everything just so that way I wouldn't feel taken off guard by however mine went because obviously they can go so many ways. And just 7 months after my first daughter was born, we got pregnant again with our second baby.
Hey, that was with my second and third baby. Sorry, I'm just jumping into your story. I feel like we're besties. Like, can we just talk?
You're good. I know.
No, yeah, that was exactly the same between my second and third, same distance. Anyways, go on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're good. So yeah, we got pregnant 7 months later. We were super surprised, but we were super excited as well. And I just knew that this was my chance and I was going to be able to shoot for a VBAC. I felt like at that point I needed to have one. I wanted to be able to deliver any children we have in the future naturally. So I felt like this was kind of a pivotal moment for me to be able to come through and just have this VBAC, and I wanted it to happen. So I went to my doctor for the first appointment. I wasn't really sure of what I was going to do as far as my prenatal care yet. So I just went to the doctor I had with my first daughter. They sent us soon after for our first ultrasound. I think it was like only around 8 weeks when we did that. And I remember trying my hardest during that ultrasound not to mention that I wanted to have a VBAC because I didn't plan on staying with them for my care, and I just didn't want them to throw random statistics at me that would try to scare me away from having a VBAC. So the whole appointment I was just pretty much staying quiet, kind of looking at my husband for reassurance and just trying to stay on course. But once I knew that everything looked really healthy with our pregnancy and the baby, when I left there, I called our local birth center, and I was interested in delivering with them. But basically, when I called, they just said, there were some liability issues with the fact that I had had a C-section prior to this pregnancy, and so my only option would be with them to deliver at home. And at that point, I had never even considered home birth for myself. So I was kind of just like, okay, I'll give you a call back later. We'll see. But it was great timing because at that point, only a couple months beforehand, I had met someone who would eventually become my midwife and a super good friend. Her name is Rebecca, and she's the best. I had only met her just really recently before we got pregnant, and I remember her asking me if that's something I would ever do, and me just completely being like, no, I wish I wouldn't have a home birth. But once I was pregnant and it came down to it, I decided I did want to deliver at home, just in the comfort of our home, in my own house. I just wanted it to be that way. And so I wanted to do it with her because she is someone I could trust and someone I felt comfortable with. So soon after that, we met at her house for a consultation. It went really well. She just asked me questions to try to get to know my situation a little more. I was able to ask her a ton of questions, and I was so happy because pretty much it felt just like having coffee and talking about my favorite conversation topic, which is babies and pregnancy. I didn't really feel like I was going to a prenatal appointment or a doctor appointment. It just felt like, I'm going to have coffee with a friend and talk about my favorite thing.
Yes, I love that about my midwife
amazing.
too.
It was such a breath of fresh air. But since my first baby, it was just a big passion. So I highly suggest finding someone who makes you feel super comfortable and someone who, you can trust and really relax around. Because for me, that made all the difference. Yeah, and once again, I had a super healthy pregnancy, and it went by super quick. I was really happy. I think I'm blessed with pretty easy pregnancies. But this time around, I experienced toward the end a lot more swelling. Partially, I would assume that was because I was pregnant for the majority of my bigger pregnant days in the summer. I had my daughter at the end of August, so it was really hot. It was fire season, so it was just totally smoky. We couldn't even really go outside, and I was just so swollen. I was like a balloon. Anyways, I hit about 37 weeks, and I felt super excited because I know at that point, it's kind of like, oh, baby can come anytime now. You say that, but then it made the time after that, I think, super long because it was every night, oh, I wonder if tonight is going to be the night. The baby can come anytime now. I wonder when she's going to come, and it was just making it drag on so long. But she still wasn't there, and I remember around that time on Facebook, I saw, or it might have been Instagram, I saw a quote that said something like, I think it said something like, your due date is an estimation, not an eviction notice.
Yes.
And for me, that was pretty much the sentence that I was able to fall back on and feel super encouraged by, and just keep on my mind that, hey, I'm coming up on my due date, but that doesn't mean anything really. I'm healthy, my baby's healthy, so I just need to be patient, is pretty much where I was at. And so around, I think just a little over 40 weeks, my midwife, I went to her house, she checked me, and I wasn't dilated at all. And so I left feeling super discouraged because we scheduled that appointment, I think, a week prior. And so going to her house, I was excited, kind of guessing how far along I might be. When I got there and she checked me, there was none. And
my gosh, that is so frustrating.
Yeah, I felt really discouraged. I remember driving home and just kind of having this battle in my head of discouragement, but then also knowing that it's okay, because I know personally multiple moms who have gone well over their due date and who have been fine. So I just had this kind of mental battle of, I'm going over and I'm not dilating at all, but also I know some moms go from pretty much 0 to 100 right during labor. So I was just trying to keep myself sort of encouraged. So we scheduled another appointment for a week out, and then, again, it felt like so long. Finally, the appointment came, and I was expecting to be at, I don't know, maybe a 3, and cervix kind of softening maybe, but I was maybe a 0 to a 1. I was still barely dilated at all at 41 weeks, and my cervix was totally thick still. It just seemed like nothing was happening, and I was getting really frustrated. My midwife, when she checked me that time, I remember she used a little bit of clary sage oil, on her gloves to help soften the cervix a little bit, which I was thinking that was really smart, and I was really grateful that she had that idea. But I was having a lot of bloody show afterwards. Oh, and I forgot to mention, for a couple of weeks prior to this, I had been having prodromal labor off and on, and so it was just a lot of oh, this might be it, oh no, this isn't it, and then so on and so forth. But after this check, I had a lot more bloody show. I felt like things were picking up, and then it kind of just went away and nothing happened. And then at this point, I was just feeling so ready. And then every time some more Braxton Hicks would start, they would just taper off, and then But
That
finally,
is so not fair. That is like
I know
the biggest mean thing in the whole world.
Yes, I would time them, and then afterwards I would look at the timesheet, and it would be like 13 minutes, 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 14 minutes. Like, it was super inconsistent, and then they would just go away. And anyways. But I think, it was finally when I was 41 weeks in 4 days. It was a Sunday morning, and that was, so my husband and I are, my husband, his name is Jesse. We are pretty involved in serving at our church. I lead a team there, so we were going to serve that day. But then when we woke up, I think it was like almost 6 o'clock in the morning, he was getting ready, and I just told him that I felt like I was too close to baby day, and I didn't want to go to church because I just felt like it was too close, and I didn't want to go into labor when I was at church. So I waited a little bit. I was kind of just scrolling around on my phone, and I think by 6:30, I was noticing that I had a few contractions. They were super small, but I didn't want to get too excited because this had happened multiple times. So I just decided to go back to sleep to kind of calm the nerves. And then I woke up again around 8:30. This was a couple hours later. I was having consistent contractions now about every 8 or so minutes, and I was getting really excited. So at this point, I called my husband. I said, I'm pretty sure this is the real deal. I'm having actual consistent contractions. They're not really hurting, but they're consistent, which is super refreshing to have. So I let him know. But that day we had lunch plans with with my family after church, and since my contractions weren't really hurting yet, I just decided to keep those plans. So I got my little one up. At that point, she was 16 and just over 16 months. I got her up. We got ready. We went to Red Robin to meet my family. And we just had lunch, and meanwhile, during that, I was just timing my contractions. Just each time I would have one, I would mark it down on my phone just so I kind of had a log of where I was at. And by the end of lunch, I remember my husband looking at my phone timer and just being like, are those your contractions that you're doing? And he was just kind of seeing how close they were. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I think we better go because they were maybe like 2 to 4 minutes apart at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, it got really quick, really fast, which is funny because I had no idea how long it was going to go for. So basically, we went home, we got our birth space ready, we put up the pool, we put the sheets, the protective sheets on our bed, we got everything ready. I was kind of just relaxing. My midwife came to check me, but I was only pretty much at a 3, and I wasn't really effaced at all, so things were pretty calm. And so she left, and she just said, when things pick up a little bit, call me back, and I'll come. And I think I was just super nervous because I think within an hour or so I called her back, and she was really just gracious and patient with me because I know at that point I was not nearly as far along as I think would have been the proper time to have her come, but I was just a little bit nervous. So she came and she just labored with us. I wasn't having much pain for most of the rest of the night, just pretty much tightening and a little bit of pressure. I was, sleeping and resting between contractions, hanging out with my daughter. At one point I got into the pool, but it was pretty early, so it really slowed things down. So I got out soon after, which is really funny because I planned on laboring in the pool more than I did. And then let's see. So, I just kind of labored that whole night, walking on the stairs, doing lunges, bouncing on the ball, anything I could think of that would help me to progress, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And then by early the next morning, I was only around a 5 to a 6, and I was starting to efface a little bit more, which was encouraging. But I was just hoping to be further along, of course. I think that's kind of the case a lot of times. You're just expecting some high number, and then you get like 5, and you're just like, oh. But, so I was at a 5 to a 6. I was effacing a little bit more that night. I, at that point, were the only ones awake. My husband was just resting since it was still pretty early. He just wanted to get his rest in so that he could save it for when it was like real active labor. Mm-hmm. And I remember going down to our stairs to do some sets of stairs. I think this was maybe like 4 or 5 in the morning, just to do sets of stairs to kind of get things rolling. And I came down into my living room, and I just saw all of the midwives that we had there. I think there were 2 or 3 of them because my midwife keeps an assistant when it's like a VBAC. And then also my photographer, who was maybe 20 plus weeks pregnant at the time, just all sleeping in different positions in my living room. Like Esther, my photographer, she was just, I remember seeing her just sleeping on the ground, and I felt so bad because she was pregnant, and I could relate with her just sleeping on the ground. She was so tired. My midwife was so exhausted. It had just been like a really long night. So I was so grateful, and I just came downstairs and saw them all, like, they're exhausted, but they're still here, you know, supporting me and just waiting for me and doing all the things, even though, you know, they're really going out of their way.
Yeah.
They were so sweet. So, yeah, so basically I labored for a while. I got in and out of the pool off and on for the next handful of hours. I was laboring in all kinds of positions. And I think about 7 hours later, finally, so this is like the next afternoon, I was finally at a 7 centimeters. And it was just, for some reason, it was taking so long. But during this cervical check, when we saw that I was at a 7, my midwife realized that our baby was asynclitic. So basically that means that her head is down, but it's kind of, her chin is kind of like tucked and her head is kind of tilted toward one of her shoulders, which wasn't allowing her to descend properly. So basically everything started making a ton of sense. And my midwife actually had a friend who had a pretty new business at the time as an in-home chiropractor. And she came just a few hours later. She was amazing to do an adjustment. It was super gentle. It was really cool, actually. And I had done a ton of chiropractic care during this pregnancy, but this was like a totally different type of adjustment, and it was exactly what we needed, I guess, because things started to pick up a little bit. Basically, at this point, I was super emotional when I would go through a little spurt of having pretty intense contractions. I remember just breaking down and crying.
Yeah.
And everyone was, you know, super supportive, just calming me down. And I didn't feel like, I wasn't doubting or being like, oh, I need to go to the hospital. But I just remember being so tired, and the contractions were hurting so much, and they were so close together. And I just felt just like I just wanted to like lay down on the floor and cry. Yeah, but my husband, I remember at this point, he was just like kind of holding my hands and doing a lot of counter pressure on my back and just being super encouraging, which was a huge plus during my labor because it was so long and it was so intense. But I said this soon after we had my daughter, that he showed pretty much like superhuman strength during my labor, because during it he was just so strong. In different positions I was able to lean against him, and at certain points I was hanging on him with my feet like off the ground, and he was just there champing through it and just giving me what I needed. In the beginning, I didn't think that having someone close a lot during my labor would be something that I really needed. But as my labor went on, I just felt like I really needed someone pretty much like there a lot of the time, just letting me know that they were there, holding my hands, touching me, just so I could feel their presence, because I was just so tired and I needed a little bit of extra, push and encouragement. So basically after that, we did some rebozo work. I was on my hands and knees, and we kind of were shifting my belly back and forth. I would get in and out of the pool still, just because for some reason the water was really overheating me. So I would get in and it would kind of help, but then I would get so hot and the baby's heart rate would kind of increase to where it wasn't really comfortable for my midwife. So the last time we did that, we got out, and I was really disappointed, but she told me that I needed to take a cold shower to cool my body down so that the baby's heart rate could go down a little bit. So I remember just going, having contractions, getting into the shower that was freezing cold, and just being super, disappointed that I was in a cold shower during all of this. So after that shower, I was just over a 9 centimeters. There was a little part of the cervix that was staying over, basically, and it wasn't allowing me to dilate fully. So through some contractions, my midwife would hold that back, and just so I could dilate past it, and the baby could come down below. So there wasn't really a point where it was like, okay, you're 10 centimeters, it's ready, you're ready to push. It just kind of evolved into that time. And in my birth video, you can see this, but I remember someone asking, is this chronological? Is she really pushing and then getting up and then pushing and then getting up? And that was totally the case. I started pushing in one position. I think we must have pushed in maybe 10 positions. Nothing, for some reason, it was just I think my body was getting so tense and I was having such a hard time relaxing through the contractions that I was almost like fighting the baby. The baby was trying to come down and I was just tensing up, and that was making it really hard for her. So we were doing a ton of different positions, and this is actually really cool. So at that point, we're starting to get ready to push, and then I remember just being totally tired. I was laying on my bed, I think on my side, doing a little bit, and then my midwife was asking me to sort of change positions so we could try to go in a different position and see what could happen with that. And I was pretty much unresponsive to her. Like, I was totally conscious. It wasn't like I was unconscious, but I was so tired and my body was so exhausted that I just couldn't even really respond when she was asking me to change positions or move. And I just remember her just, standing up from the bed and being like, okay, everyone stop. Like, we have to stop. I don't want this to feel like this is all happening to her. Like, I want her to be able to be a part of this or to have a part in this. I want her to feel like she's in control and that this isn't all just happening to her, which I was super grateful for, because at that point I did feel totally out of control because I was just totally exhausted. And so she gave me actually some smooth transitions. It just basically helped my contractions to minimally slow down so I could get a little bit of a break and take a shower and just try to regroup and get a little bit of energy. And I was really, really grateful for that. That was one of the moments that stood out so much in my labor, is that I was pretty much at the point to push, but my midwife was seeing that I wasn't really there and I wasn't really in control, and she in that moment was super like empowering and encouraging, and she was able to kind of lift me up and give me what I needed to go on, which I was so grateful for. But I remember being in that shower and I was starting to fall asleep in the shower, and my husband and my midwife were coming in and trying to convince me to get out of the shower. And I kept telling them, I'm not falling asleep. I just need one more minute. And then they would go out and I would just close my eyes immediately and try to just rest for a minute. But finally I got out, and again, we were pushing in so many positions. I think I pushed for a total of almost 4 hours. And the position I ended up delivering on was on my back, on my bed, which was funny because I imagined, I'm having a home birth. I'm probably going to be squatting at the foot of my bed or in the water or just anything different. But I was laying on my back just like I would at a hospital, I think. And yeah, so she ended up coming out. At that point, I felt a little burst of energy. I was super excited. My midwife warned me pretty much immediately that because of the labor that we had, I didn't mention this, the total labor was about like 49 and a half hours.
Wow.
And 32 hours of those were active labor.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
So long. I was so exhausted. And so she was telling me because of that it was likely that I might hemorrhage. But at that point I didn't. And I was super thankful for that. And I remember being really excited. The placenta was still in. And I just remember being like, okay, can I push it? Can I push it? Because at that point, I felt really strong and I felt like nothing could ever hurt that bad. And I would just like, this placenta would be a breeze. Like, I just pushed it out and it came out and I was so happy. Yeah, basically, like, so that was our birth story with our second. And I think it's super funny actually because after I had the birth, like, I hear a lot of birth stories where it's like, and I think, Julie, even one of yours was like this, where it's like, I did it. Like, my body did it. Like, I was able to do it, which is amazing. And like, after I had her, I actually didn't feel this huge sense of pride. Like, I felt honestly a little bit like, because it was so long and because it was so hard, that it was just like, I was like too weak. Like, I couldn't really, like, because of how intense it was kind of like my fault. Like, for some reason, my weakness might have caused it to be that way. And I think honestly, it took a few months to even feel like, you know what, I did do that. Like, my body totally was strong enough to do that and know that I can do it again. I think that gives me like a little bit of hope for any children that I have in the future, because I know the chances are another labor happening that is that long and that intense are pretty low. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like, like totally I can do that again. But yeah, I would say just overall, I had such a supportive team. I was surrounded by only people who were encouraging me and like talking when I needed them to, and just being quiet when I needed them to. And everyone was just there and they were ready to uplift and empower. And definitely having people surrounding you who are going to be that for you, whether that's one person or 10 people, is so important. And that was super important for me. And I was just so grateful to all of them.
I love how much your team just trusted you and took care of you. I feel
Yes.
like, yeah, it was a really long labor, but you were so well taken care of and trusted, and you did it. And not everyone has that, like my freak out little, I did it. That was my first VBAC. I know, it was pretty funny. Like, everyone was just bawling, everyone's sobbing in the room, and I'm like, oh.
I love it.
But then by the time I had my fourth baby, she just came shooting out at me. I literally pushed for 2.5 minutes, and I had no idea what happened from the time, like, she came from the top of my birth canal to born in 2.5 minutes.
Wow.
Like, that is, and that was so crazy. Like, I had to take a minute to, like, register and, like, what in the heck just happened to me, because now all of a sudden I have a baby in my arms, and I remember just, like, looking around kind of like I'm confused, and it's like weird, right? I'm just, like, looking around like I'm confused, and I'm like, what just happened? And then I'm like, oh shoot, there's somebody, like, videoing me, because I have her birth video also.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I better say something. And then I'm like, hi. Just so funny.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this, that when she was born, she was 9 pounds.
Oh my gosh, look at you.
Yeah.
That is so, you worked so hard and you did it. And just because you didn't have the, your moment was different than everybody else's moment doesn't mean that you were any less powerful. And you're probably
Totally, yeah.
more powerful than a lot, because some midwives would have transferred you to the hospital. Some women would have given up and say, okay, I can't do this anymore. And that's okay. Like, it's okay for that to happen, but you trusted your heart, you trusted your knowledge, and you had the right team to get you through this. And I am very proud of you for that. And I'm so excited that you had this incredible story. But I want to talk a little bit about chiropractors.
Yeah.
We haven't done a chiropractor information or blog on our podcast yet, but gosh, we love chiropractors. Megan has several in Salt Lake County that she refers to. I have like 3 on my list right now, and we're going to have a special episode with a chiropractor. I think it's going to be August. I'm not quite sure. We've got to schedule it out. But a chiropractor whose wife had a VBAC. And so we're going to have them on the episode. And you guys, I don't know if you know this, but chiropractic care during pregnancy, just pregnancy in general, sets you up physically for, it's just like one more check mark in the box of like perfect preparation, right? Even though I guess there's not really such thing as perfect preparation. But if your hips are out of alignment or your spine is out of alignment, that closes up the pelvic opening. And so it's harder for your baby to get through. And it's funny because I'm actually going to just let Megan tell a little story because her hips are a little wonky.
They are.
And go ahead and take it away,
what
Megan.
happens with my hips is naturally, and I don't know why, but naturally the right side of my hip will go, or the right side of my pelvis will go forward, and it will force the left side of my pelvis to go backwards, which then twists my sacrum. And it just happens. Like, it happens. And when I'm pregnant, it happens easier, right? Because we've got relaxing going on and all the hormones. And so that's kind of what happened to me. And I, like Destiny, had a chiropractor who came to my birth. She adjusted me earlier that day and kind of like untwisted my sacrum. She did some craniosacral as well. And then my cute midwife, we had a plan to go meet each other at the birth center, and she went and picked up my chiropractor. And she brought her to the birth center, and she adjusted me too. And, you know, the next morning I went to go in, and my baby was at a +2 station at 4 centimeters, which is insane.
Low.
That's a very low baby for 4 centimeters.
Yeah.
So, and I swear to this day that she had such an impact on that and setting myself up. So as soon as he rotated, it was just bing, bing, boom, and cervix was gone, and he was out into contractions. You know, and my first one, like, I would have never even thought of going to a chiropractor. My second one, everyone told me, oh, you want a VBAC? You should go see a chiropractor. You should go see a chiropractor. And I'm like, yeah, no way. Nope, they're quacks.
Chiropractors are so hippie.
They're
That's what people
quacks.
think.
I said
Yeah,
they
they're
were quacks. I was like, no,
Fake science.
they're quacks. And there's no way. And man, let me tell you what. I changed my views on chiropractors. I love chiropractors. I still go to chiropractors, even not pregnant. My babies have been adjusted. You know, my baby had torticollis. This is off the topic of VBAC, but my baby had torticollis, and chiropractic care really, really changed a lot of things. So it's so important, and it's awesome that Destiny had a chiropractor that could come to her home and adjust her. And a lot of these Webster chiropractors actually do offer that. So we on the blog today I kind of share my story about chiropractic care, what chiropractic care does, and how to find a Webster chiropractor in your area. So if you go, make sure to ask them, hey, if I'm in labor and you're not open, how can I get a hold of you? And can you come see me and adjust me in labor?
And if you're in Utah, connect with Megan and I because we've got
you
a list.
we've got your peeps. Yep.
Awesome. Do you know what? Chiropractic care is great for helping get that birth canal and that pelvic opening ready for the baby to come. But do you know what else it does? It helps you sleep better. It helps your hips move better. It decreases pelvic pain. It can help with SPD. It helps with migraines. It helps.
Yep.
I had prodromal labor for 30 days before my last baby, and that was like I said, Destiny, so rude, right? So rude, prodromal labor is. But my going to the chiropractor 2 or 3 times a week really helped minimize that and help me sleep better along with that too. And so I had a client once tell me, well, and she listens to every single episode, even though she's not a VBAC, so she's going to know exactly who I'm talking about. But she says, we're not chiropractic people. And I'm like, guess what? It's time to get to be chiropractic people because these chiropractors are going to hook you up and get you ready for the best birth experience possible.
Definitely. And in addition to that, if everything is aligned, oxytocin flows better. So
The love
hormone that helps
get that baby out.
So keeping your body aligned, it really is important. So that is our spiel on chiropractic care.
Yay, Destiny, thank you so much. I feel like we should talk at least once a week because you're so cute and I love your little giggle and I just love your story and I love everything
seeing
about
your
you.
posts every day.
Yeah,
I
and
love
you
your
need to
video.
have another baby so that we can
Yeah.
have a reason to talk even more.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
again.
guys so much for having me.
Would you like to be a guest on the podcast? Head over to thevbaclink.com/share and submit your story. For more information on all things VBAC, including online and in-person VBAC classes, the VBAC blog, and Julie and Megan's bios, head over to thevbaclink.com. Congratulations on starting your journey of learning and discovery with the VBAC Link.